Hi friends, welcome back to another episode of Generation Tech. My name is Alan. As you can see, I have my Mandalorian helmet on, which isn't actually that great because apparently you really can't take these helmets off once you put them on. There's like a, there's like a safety mechanism. It's not just this is the way, it's more like buyer beware. Your face will be trapped in here forever. But anyway, let's continue on to the video. Now, one of the more interesting side arcs in the Mandalorian TV show is a series of flashback scenes that run throughout the entire first season that showcase Din Djarin's recruitment/rescue by the Mandalorian group known as Death Watch, which honestly raises a lot of questions and deserves an episode of its own, probably. But anyway, we get to see brief glimpses of Din Djarin's parents, and it's interesting to note that the entire family is wearing red robes. Now, I'm not a fashion expert when it comes to Star Wars clothing. I generally go with a V-neck, as you guys all know. There's normal clothing, like what Han Solo wears. And then you kind of have religious cult wear, which almost always involves a robe with a hood on it. I actually have one of these. I sometimes wear it in our videos. I basically looted the Jedi Temple after Order 66. That's another story for another time. Now, I know Mandalorians, like the Jedi, try to forget their past life. But like all individuals who are captured/rescued/kidnapped at a very young age, their past will eventually come up no matter how happy they are in their new cult/organization/tribe thing. They're just gonna have to confront it. Given the fact that Din Djarin has adopted a baby Yodakin with immense force powers, his potential connection to a religious cult of... His potential connection to a religious cult should be something we focus on because most religious cults in the Star Wars universe focus on force worshipping, or at least worshipping force users as individuals who have a higher consciousness and connection to something they see as holy. And now think about it, whenever you see a Jedi or a Sith Lord or a Sith cultist, they're always wearing that robe and hooded thing that we see Din Djarin and his parents wearing in that flashback scene. Do you think this is COVID safe? And so originally when I saw the red robes, I quickly started researching Sith cults. Now we know the Sith love red. It's a bold color and the individuals who wear it have to bring that same type of passion and energy that the red color emits out. It screams, look at me, I'm covered in the blood of my enemies. Now Palpatine and Snoke especially like this red motif and surrounded themselves with red guards and red stormtroopers even. But a quick look at the Sith cultists and we notice something a bit different. They all tend to wear black. This is because they're more subdued, almost as if they were less worthy individuals. While the Emperor's Royal Guardsmen and Elite Praetorian Guard of Snoke are designed to inspire awe, terror, and generally discourage people from acting out of line, the average Sith cultist probably was supposed to stay out of sight and seen as kind of a subhuman, not so worthy individual. They were essentially like thralls for vampires, a lesser race of individuals that a Sith Lord would look down upon. And that's probably why they don't wear red, so we could probably rule out that Din Djarin's parents were Sith cultists. So the next thing I started thinking about was a few scenes from Rogue One on the moon of Jedha. So Jedha is this ancient planet with these toppled over massive sculptures of Jedi Knights and ruins of Force temples. It's also a moon that has a significant amount of kyber crystals on it. These are semi-sentient minerals that can amplify energy to a great amount. They're used in lightsabers and can develop a force bond with a Jedi or Sith user. And in Rogue One, it was also a material that was basically harvested by the Empire for the main laser weapon on the first Death Star. So generally in Star Wars lore, any planet that has kyber crystal deposits on it will attract the Jedi presence eventually. This is why Jedha is oftentimes seen as the birthplace of the entire Jedi Order, along with Ahch-To, Ossus, and Tython, and a few other planets. But for one reason or another, Jedha, specifically Jedha City, is home to a lot of pilgrims and religious organizations, more so than the other planets that I just mentioned. As a matter of fact, Jedha was oftentimes called the Pilgrim Moon because, honestly, other than all the ruins and temples, there was nothing else on the planet to see. Now, in the city itself, you're going to see all sorts of weird individuals wearing religious uniforms. You had the Church of the Force. These were individuals who followed and believed in the ideals and principles of the Jedi Order. The positive ideals, not the stealing babies and repressing basic human desires like love ideals. These guys also tried to eschew modern technology and get closer to nature. Although I'm not sure there's much nature on Jakku, there's only sand and broken dreams and salvage, but fine, nature. Now, one of the common practices that the Church of the Force undertook was taking kyber crystals and returning them back to where they originally were mined, which could be why they have such a heavy presence on Jedha. Amongst their members, you had individuals like Lord Santeca and that entire village that gets wiped out on Jakku. Now, the Church of the Force is pretty cleaned up, and they basically will throw themselves at the feet of the Jedi if they ever encounter them. They basically worship them as living deities, sort of, you know? But the Church of the Force is definitely more of a grassroots type of religion. They don't really seem to wear robes or have much of a structure. So typically, when you're in a religion that involves you wearing robes, you're probably going to be in a more like fundamentalist and probably rigid kind of group. This is where the disciples of the wills come in. These individuals you basically see all over Jedha City, and they definitely stand out a little bit. They all wear these very simplistic red robes that are exactly what Din Djarin's parents are wearing. You have individuals like this guy, Anger Trell, who is just a background character who's hanging out in the city. Then there's this female Animid, Sylvani Fest, who converted to the disciples of the Wills shortly before the Battle of Yavin, which means he's a new convert during Rogue One. You also probably remember this guy, Tostor Ni. He's actually a part of the Brotherhood of Beatification Countenance. It's a species-specific religion that comes from the Loridians. It's not related to the Disciple of the Wills. So who exactly are the Disciple of the Wills anyway? Well, the Wills are actually an incredibly important part of Star Wars lore that directly is linked to George Lucas's view of Star Wars. You see, his original idea for the sequel trilogy would have been a kind of Osmosis Jones take on Star Wars, as in everything would have taken place at the microbial level with like midichlorians. I know, great, right? Midichlorians are organisms inside of everyone's bloodstream that serve as like kind of a mediator between sentient beings and the Force itself. The higher midichlorian count, the easier it is for you to access all of those powers. Now, the Wills are another microbial being, and they basically feed off of the Force, and they control the entire destiny of the galaxy, like literally everything. They were responsible for almost everyone's life, including epic stuff like the Chosen One prophecy. So Lucas actually had this really weird view that all the living beings in the Star Wars universe didn't actually matter. They were just vessels for the Force itself, and the Wills were kind of the embodiment of what the Force is. Now, obviously this is kind of strange. This would make a strange sequel trilogy. Honestly, the fans would probably really hate it, but this is kind of what the creator, George Lucas himself, intended, so you gotta give it to him, right? Otherwise there's no Star Wars. So essentially, the Disciple of the Wills are disciples of the Force itself. They have a more direct connection with the energy than, say, the children of the Force of the Sith cultists who worship the Jedi and Sith. So these are kind of relaxed guys. They just hung around and tried to listen for the Force and, its message beaming down from all over the place. They also believed that the dark side and the light side of the Force were valuable, and therefore both sides were needed to create true balance. This actually puts their ideology counter to the Sith and the Jedi. Disciples of the Wills are also one of the oldest religious organizations on Jedha and perhaps in the galaxy. They might even be older than the Jedi. They might even be older than the Jedi and Sith. The Disciples of the Wills were pretty relaxed individuals, and when they weren't trying to listen to the Force and praying to the Kyber Temple, they basically walk around the streets collecting alms for the poor, and they even ran an orphanage on Jedha. It should be noted that the Guardians of the Wills were a bit different. This is the group that Chirrut Imwe and Baze Malbus belonged to at one time. These guys basically try to sense the Force and feel its guidance instead of listening, and they were focused on protecting the Temple of Kyber and all the pilgrims who visited it. They were basically religious security guards with very low Force sensitivity. So why is it important that Din Djarin's parents were disciples of the Wills? Well, most likely, judging by Din Djarin's age during these scenes, he's probably old enough to also inherit this religious ideology. He's basically wearing the same robes, and he's definitely old enough to have some memories and develop some worldviews. Now, Din Djarin, of course, never really talks about his past or his religious beliefs because this is the way. Remember, once you're in the Mandalorian tribe, you have a clean slate and a new identity, but if Din Djarin is a former disciple of the Wills, he will have a profound respect for the Force, and he'll also have respect for those who wield it. I'm starting to wonder if it's not just a coincidence that he was the individual to rescue the Baby Yoda and not basically betray it and turn it in. I feel like this part of his past is not really fully uncovered yet, and I do look forward to seeing how Din Djarin's past in the Disciple of the Wills, if that's a real thing, will affect his eventual encounter with the Jedi. Now remember, Din Djarin only really knows that the Jedi were once foes of the Mandalorians. It's unlikely that his parents told him anything about it because the Jedi were still kind of rare, and it didn't really have anything to do with the disciples of the Wills because they worshiped the Force, not the individuals that had access to the Force. Lastly, I have to point out that usually it's pointless to look too much into the details when it comes to Star Wars, but The Mandalorian is actually being helmed by Dave Filoni, who is a certified Star Wars nerd. I mean, he's also an incredible skilled animator, but he in many ways has taken on the role of being George Lucas's successor and protege. So The Mandalorian isn't just helmed by a bunch of directors and producers who kind of want to cash in on the Star Wars name and maybe advance their own profession and career, with this franchise. Dave Filoni is definitely legit. I believe he's completely invested in the story and probably knows more about Star Wars than any living being in the world outside of maybe the Star Wars story group. So I think anything is possible, and it's really important to look at the small details in this TV show, say compared to, the sequel movies that were, meh. Especially when The Mandalorian is such a minimalistic show, every detail, including the entire family wearing red robes, probably has a greater purpose that might be revisited one day. So that is my connection between Din Djarin and the Disciple of the Wills. Let me know what you think in the comment section down below. Also, don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification button also down below. And as usual, thanks for joining us today. If you're watching this, you are Generation Tech.